Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. My tongue did not want to work there. Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. And yes, that is in the episode. Today we have Keith. I'm let him pronounce his last name. I'll botch that one up. I already know. But
Knotek.
Knotek. There we go. So he is a 30-year career law enforcement officer in California. From California, now lives over Arizona way. But he worked everywhere from Southern California all the way up. Actually worked in my hometown of Redding for a while. Actually, while I still lived there as well, I would have been about 5 or 6. But then he worked back in LA. I was showing your age there, Keith. But he's been in lots of different stuff, lots of shootings and that. He also even wrote a book about it all. So we're going to talk about all that today. We're going to talk about burnout. We're going to talk about his career, how he worked through stuff, what he does now, all of that. But first, before we start, as I like to always do, and half the time forget to say it, take one thing. Just take one thing away from today. That's all I want you to focus on taking away for you listeners and viewers, because that's most important. You can take action on one thing. If you try and take action on a dozen things, you'll take no action at all, most likely. So just take action on one thing today. Come back and listen to it again. Also, make sure you like, subscribe. This episode is sponsored by Create From Why. So go to createfromwhy.com, especially if you're a frontline officer or frontline worker. We help you to no longer burn out and really actually know who you are, so you can just give to that community even more. So without further ado, Keith, why don't you take it away? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your policing, and we'll talk about burnout.
All right, sounds good. So I had an interest in law enforcement when I was a kid, like from age 6 on up. And I went into the Police Explorer program in the community that I grew up in, Huntington Beach, California. And I think I was 16 when I went into the program. Started going on ride-alongs and taking different classes through the Explorer program on technical law enforcement topics. And I was just fascinated by it. I loved the learning. And coming from a sheltered home, it really opened up a new world for me as a kid, as a teenager. It opened my eyes to the realities of the real world. It's like, oh, you mean bad things happen? So
besides my bike getting taken away from me by my parents, there's bad things that happen.
Exactly. So I got a taste of that and I wanted more. And I made up my mind that I wanted to go into police work when I became an adult. So after I graduated high school, I was hired as a police cadet, which was a paid position at Huntington Beach PD. Worked the front desk, worked in the city jail, and then worked in the traffic bureau doing traffic control at traffic collisions and writing parking tickets and stuff like that. And then when I was 20 and a half, Huntington Beach hired me as a police recruit. I went through the academy, graduated in 1986, and hit the streets with my FTO. And it's like, you're a 21-year-old kid, not a lot of life experience. Here's a badge, here's a gun, and here's the car keys. Now go out and do some good in the world, right?
I have to ask. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt your story, but I do want to know. I'm just curious right now. What was the make and model of the car that you were driving?
The first one, the very first police car that I ever drove was a 1982. So it would have been 4 years old. A 1982 Chevy Malibu police package.
Yeah.
And then they phased those out shortly, or they are actually phasing them out when I started. And then I was driving a 1986 Chevy Impala.
Yeah.
Impala or Caprice, I can't remember which, but it was one of the big, the big boxy
Yeah, the big boxy type things. No, the reason that I ask is because it doesn't matter what technology we have, you can still get the job done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In
Sorry.
fact,
Yeah.
yeah, man. So we were actually getting NDTs in the car at that time. We were one of the first agencies in Orange County to get them. When I first started, it was old school. We old schooled it. There was a big like clipboard looking thing in the center console, and when you got a call, you wrote it down because there was no computer to send the information to. There was no mapping system or
Yeah.
GPS, any of that stuff. We had the map light, the clipboard with the paper on it, the radio, and all that junk. And we used to handwrite our reports. So
Yep. There you go. There you go. There you go, guys.
but it was awesome. It was awesome. I loved it. So I started my career in Southern California, and then my wife at the time, my first ex-wife, and
we'll talk about that.
decided we didn't want to raise our kids in Orange County in Southern California. We wanted, a different life for them when we started having kids. We were both in our early 20s. So in 91, we made the move to Shasta County, moved to Redding. And my wife it was perfect timing because she was pregnant with our first child when we made the move up there. So the timing couldn't have been any better.
Yeah.
So my eldest daughter, Allie, she likes to be called Alex now. She was born at Mercy Medical Center up there in Redding.
Yep. My friend of mine works there now.
Okay. And so I got hired by the sheriff's department as a deputy at Shasta SO. My wife at the time was a dispatcher for Orange County Sheriff's Department when we lived in Southern California. She was hired as a dispatcher by Shasta SO. So we were a Shasta SO kind of family. And but I was in the jail. My first and only assignment actually with that department was in the jail. And after being a street cop and being a field training officer and working traffic and working on the beach detail, and then getting locked inside a concrete building for 12 hours a day, I just, I was young. I was 25. I mean, I wanted to do more, So I lateraled to Butte County Sheriff's Department. We moved to Chico, California, and then baby number 2 came along. So I have 2 daughters, but I did a bunch of different things with Butte County, primarily patrol, but then I was assigned to the hostage negotiation team as a collateral duty. And then they took me off patrol and I was assigned to Chapman Town, which is not a very nice area. At least it wasn't back then. I was the community-oriented policing deputy. They started this COPS program, and in the lower income areas with high crime rates, each of those smaller areas had its own dedicated deputy assigned to that area. So I got a lot of good experience working in there. In Chapman Town, I promoted to sergeant in 95, and got reassigned from my COPS assignment back to patrol. So I went to South County Patrol, and then in 6 months into my promotion, I'm learning how to do my new job, and how to be a supervisor and all that stuff, and getting acquainted with my people on my team that I took over. I was involved in a shooting. It was basically a run and gun battle behind this church. It was a domestic violence suspect, and we ran out into a field. He opened fire on us, and my deputy, Randy Jennings, that was running in front of me, was hit 5 times. Sadly, he was killed. He was hit in the vest several times. That stopped the rounds from going through, but the fatal round penetrated Randy's body just below the neckline and above the Kevlar of his vest.
Unlucky.
So that was a hard one. And I was the only one that walked out of that incident alive. The bad guys no longer with us either. So it was very traumatic. I had, by that time, I had 11 years working as a cop, and never had anything quite like that happen. And it was terrifying, traumatic. I grieved for my friend. And back then, I didn't know that I actually had post-traumatic stress from that incident, because PTSD or PTS wasn't a thing. It wasn't a buzzword back then like it is now.
And if you actually think about it, you would have had an accumulation, and that would have been the not just the last straw, but the last branch to add on to the straw to cause it all. It's so important to bring awareness to that for people as well, and for the non-law enforcement that are out there as well. I know I've talked to so many people, and they're like, oh, the cops in the States, or even people that are in the States, the cops just want to pull their gun, and they want they shoot people all the time. That just shows, and I know it's different now, but that just shows 11 years. I'm sure you had to draw your weapon in that, but 11 years before there was a situation where it was like, okay,
lethal force.
I have to use this force. You didn't. I'm putting words in your mouth, but I can, from the conversations that we've had, I can guarantee that you didn't ever want to have to use that force. It's not a want. It's a thing of shit. I have to. That's all. Real quick before we hear about the rest of your story and what's what you experienced and what you went through. How'd you work through that time at that time? Like, obviously you were going through stuff. How did you actually work through that in those moments? Like, the moments afterwards.
Very poorly.
Okay.
You ask a good question, I'll give you an honest answer. Very poorly. I wasn't equipped at the time because the way I was trained by the old school guys. Couple of my early training officers in the mid 80s were Vietnam vets, combat vets. One guy was actually Army Special Forces. So their solution to experiencing trauma and stuff was, just go home and drink, or go to the bar or whatever, suck it up and go back to work the next day. So, I started drinking more. At the time, I went to the department psychologist to get cleared to go back to work, and I thought about it. I'm like, okay, I have 11 years on the job. I'm not gonna just piss it all away. I have some time invested in this. If I stick it out until I'm 50, I'm going to get a good retirement. I'm going to walk away, provided I live that long,
I'm sure you weren't thinking about, you were thinking about if I live that long, as in not getting killed in the line of duty, but I don't think
pretty much
probably were thinking about it mentally wise.
Exactly. So, the old adage, if you fall off the horse, you get back on it and ride it again. So I'm like, and by this time I was going through my first divorce. So I was living in my house by myself. My soon-to-be ex-wife moved back to Southern California with our 2 daughters, and we shared custody. And that was a whole other story.
Did that divorce start before the shooting, or around?
It was before the shooting. It actually happened right before I promoted to sergeant. She filed, and then later moved back to Orange County.
Did
So
did she say? I'm just curious because obviously policing has got the highest divorce rate out of like any career out there.
mhm.
Did she say why she filed for divorce, or have you ever have you talked? Obviously, you have two kids, so
Oh,
I'm sure you talk
sure.
to each other all the time. Did she? Have you guys talked
Yeah.
about
Oh,
what the
yeah. We get
actual?
along fine now.
Did she?
We were
Did she?
both.
Have you guys talked about what was the leading cause of the actual divorce, deeper than whatever the emotional response was that was going on at the time?
Yeah, sure. Um, we get along fine now. We really do, and which is good for our daughter's sake. I mean, one's 30 years old now. The other one's about to turn 27 this month.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I didn't share my feelings. I didn't talk about anything with her. And she said she wanted all of me, the good, the bad, whatever. So I'd come home from work. I wouldn't talk about anything that happened at work. And I put on the fake face, acted like everything was fine. But I was off in another world, when we were together. So she began to talk to somebody else.
Hey,
Um,
it happens. And you can't blame her. You can't blame yourself. You didn't know any better. But this is why I wanted to also, because I heard your story. We're both on another thing that's called Power of Our Story, which is amazing. Any first responders that are listening that want to have a conversation, reach out to me and I'll get you in touch with the organizer for that. It's completely free and it's amazing. But I heard your story there. And I heard you say about the multiple divorces, and I was like, I want to know more about that, because I had this thing in my head. I was like, I wonder if it is the fact of just the communication side, and then it's ended up going into something else. Because
yeah,
when somebody doesn't have their needs met at home, well, guess what? They're going to go looking for them somewhere else. It's just like when you
yeah.
starve yourself, your body's going to sit there and go, I don't care what I eat, just give me some food.
Mhm.
It's a need. So no, I'm glad that you have awareness there, that you were able to say that and you're able to share that, because I know, well, for listeners and viewers, and that whether you're a cop, whether you're not, whatever, that communication thing is key. The good, the bad, the ugly. And my wife and my story is, well, I don't know if you've heard it, but some viewers will, some may not have. But mine is, I almost cheated on my wife. I got to that stage where I was like, I'm gonna go for it. And then I caught myself and I was like, what is wrong with you? Because my parents cheated on each other. And so I saw the destruction that it caused, and I vouched for myself I never would. And that was the moment I went home and I was like, I want a divorce. And so that same sort of thing, but my wife is stubborn as hell. She's a Scorpio. And and she said, you are going to counseling with me one more time. And luckily we got a good counselor. And even the counselor said 80 to 90% of people will not make it through what you guys are going through right now. And
Oh,
both of us
wow.
went, even in my state that I was in, then I was like, what? 80 to 90% of people won't make it through this. I love her. This is why but yeah. So I wanted to just bring some awareness to that for the listeners, and that right now, while we're kind of in the topic,
Yeah, yeah.
because it's
So
so
the
important. The divorce rate doesn't have to happen in policing. We just need to communicate better, especially us guys.
yeah, we need as well, men and women, we need to
Yeah.
be self-aware.
Yeah.
That's the key. And what I didn't realize until after the fact was, because she was also, my ex was a dispatcher. When I got hired as a deputy, she got hired as a dispatcher for Butte County. So again, we're on the same department. But then after the birth of my second daughter, we decided, you know what, she's going to be a stay-home mom. I'm going to be the breadwinner. And so now we're down to one income. So
Mm,
I was working as much overtime as I could. I was
wow.
killing it with the overtime. And because we were understaffed, as many agencies are. So she's home dealing with a couple, with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, right? And she's dying for adult conversation when I get home from work, but I am physically and mentally tapped out from
Yeah.
working a 10-hour overtime shift, or from working my normal 10-hour shift, which
Yeah.
turned into a 15-hour overtime shift.
And never
You know?
processing everything. So it drains our
Right.
energy just by not processing the stuff. This is why I always say you got to look after yourself, number one. Then it's your partner, your significant other, then the rest, kids,
Right.
and then family, and then work and all that. Yeah, overtime is great to pay the bills and that, but it's not worth it if you're not together or you're destroyed or you're 6 feet under.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah, brother.
yeah, it's and that's the thing is yeah, and this is I think I hope anybody who's listening kind of understands and realizes that, because it is so important. All right, so you're Chico, going through the divorce, had that shooting, not really dealing with it, started drinking, or drinking heavily, I take it, to kind of cope with it. What happened next? Yeah, off and on. Yeah, you hit that. Let me ask. Like, I never went down the drinking, but I know many people that have hit that hard job or have that hard job or feel drained, but yet your adrenaline is fucking peaking through the roof, because one, it's trying to keep you a lot. It's keeping you going just from the fatigue of the job, but two, also from just the adrenaline of the job. Any cop who says that they don't run on adrenaline every day, even if they're in peak state and they're loving their job more than anything, you're running on adrenaline for that whole 10-12 hour shift, because your life is on the line consistently. You don't know when that call is going to come in. So yo-yoing with the drinking and that, then what was going on?
So also during that time, I was in the lateral hiring process for San Jacinto PD back down in Southern California, because my estranged wife, the divorce wasn't final yet. She moved back to Orange County. I was still in Northern California. We would do this 4-hour drive, each of us, where she'd drive up from Southern California. I would drive south from Northern California, and we would meet in Central California in a little place off of I-5 called Coalinga, if you've ever heard of that.
I've driven through there. It rings a bell, because I've done that drive. It is probably one of the most boring drives I've ever done.
It is
I-5 from LA.
So we do the kit exchange, and then we turn around and then go back our separate ways. And that went on for a while. It was ridiculous. So, I thought, all right, I have a job up here, I have a house, but my life, my children, this isn't good for them. And my eldest daughter was going to start kindergarten the following year. She was going to go to school in Laguna Niguel in Orange County. It's like, once that happens, we're not going to be able to do that thing every 2 weeks that we were doing. So I decided to test for agencies back in Southern California, so I could be closer to my daughter. So San Jacinto was flying a lateral police sergeant position. I got hired by them as a patrol sergeant, did a bunch of different stuff with them, worked a bunch of different assignments, patrol, detective sergeant, traffic sergeant. I was the FTO coordinator as a sergeant, and was involved in some stuff there. I got in another shooting in 2002 on a traffic stop. At night, I was walking up on a vehicle that I had stopped for headlight out, and
stolen car.
I had one car.
Was it a stolen car?
It was a G ride. Yeah, it was a stolen car. It was a cold plated stolen car. So they took plates off of a legit vehicle and put it on the stolen vehicle. It was the same make. And so when I ran it, when I called it out, it came back to a Ford, registered to so-and-so in Hemet, which is a neighboring city. And I'm like, I didn't know any different. Walked up on it, saw the gun barrel come out the window as I'm walking up, and I booked it. between the front of my vehicle and the rear of the stolen vehicle. And I just put lead downrange through the back window. He ducked and threw the car and drive and peeled off. And I ran around to the back of my car. And because when I was letting lead go, I was on the passenger side of my car by the engine block, and he peeled off. So by the time I got in my car, threw it in drive, called it out over the radio and all that, all I saw was taillights way off in the distance. But we later we found him. He was a parole absconder, and a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. So he got to do the ride to prison.
Yep, that's the one.
And
for anybody
that was
listening,
another
the reason, and we'll go into real quick that I just want to bring some stuff for anybody who's new into the job of that and isn't aware. A lot of times when somebody steals a car or smashes the barrel on it, it short circuits things and a headlight will go out or a tail light will go out. And so as a stolen car, it's something to be aware of, especially like for this situation. It's something that you can you think about. I used to stop every car that had a headlight out because I was like, and I used to be aware, like prepared for a chase because most likely a stolen car. And there's quite a few of them. So it's something to be aware of that. Now you get into another shooting, haven't really dealt with the first one. How many years afterwards is this?
5 years.
5 years. So
it's 5 years after.
5 years not dealing with it. Obviously the compounding of the trauma of everything else that you're going to as well. How'd you deal with this one?
Drank. I went home and drank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did anybody ever ask you how you were doing?
Oh, sure.
What was your response?
I told him I was fine.
And those probably exact words.
Exactly. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I'm lucky he didn't get the drop on me. But when you see your life flash before your very eyes, like that first one in 97, I thought I was going to die. The one in 2002, I thought I was going to die, but I still had the will to survive and stay in the fight. And if I can do it, I'm going to get rounds off before he can. And I did. He didn't even fire a single shot. I guess
good response, good reaction.
Yeah. I guess my reaction scared him. He decided to take off instead of engage me. And I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
So, but it was still very scary, very traumatic. Getting shot at and actually pulling the trigger are two very different things. I mean, I was shot at once before in 88, but it was like a nothing deal. It was like a couple of pot shots, and I was with another officer. We're like, where the hell did that come from? And it was kind of a nothing deal. It's like, oh, wow. But when you're actively engaging a threat, it's a mind bend for sure.
Yeah, they all add up as well. Even that first one of like, oh, that was because then your mind starts to go, oh, that could have been this, or that could have turned into this. Oh my God. And our minds are designed to find fear. The fight, fight or freeze. The reticulating activated system in the back of our brain. Our brains are 2 million years old. They're designed to fear saber-toothed tigers and lions and all these different things from 2 million years ago. Not having people shoot at us, or not having social media sit there and tell you that you're fat, and so our mind consistently finds that fear, and then we react to it in the way that we just know how. And your reaction because of training was, I go home, I drink, I tell everybody I'm fine. Because again, and it's nothing wrong with the kind of people that law enforcement normally are, but we're alpha type personality of, I'm strong, I'm going to fix everything. And so I'm going to fix everything. So that means that I need to fix myself. I don't need your help. And it is a very strong thing. And we're normally the most strong-minded people out there. But that's also the flip side of that. We can also destroy ourselves really easily because we are what's the word I'm looking for? We are very we're very driven, but it's the other side. I can't think of it. I'll think of it in a second. But we're very we don't ask for help. We don't think that something is wrong. We just literally will
No,
move
we think we're
through it.
very self-sufficient, very
That's it.
self-reliant, very
That's it.
self-sufficient.
Self-reliant. Yeah.
Yeah,
That we can just do it
yeah,
ourselves. And yes,
yep,
we can. But guess what? The most powerful people in the world still have a board of trustees, and they still have people around them that they ask questions to. So all right, so
absolutely.
you're in the second shooting. Still not dealing with anything. What happened next?
Still not dealing with anything. Saw a lot of death, on the job. Eventually, I was reassigned from patrol as San Jacinto PD's one and only detective sergeant. So, it was a smaller agency. We had at the time, the city's grown since then. It's a city of about 50,000 people now, but back then, I think we had like 35,000 people. So we had like 40 sworn. Most of the guys were in patrol, and then we had 6 detectives and me.
Yeah.
So all the homicides, all the nasty carnage and all of that, I'd get called out in the middle of the night and have to go deal with that with my team of detectives, child molestations, rapes, armed robberies, homicides, stuff like that. Suspicious deaths that could turn out to be a homicide.
Oh.
So, saw a lot of unpleasantries.
Putting it nicely.
And then in 2004, by this time, and I was only detective sergeant for like 8 months, and then I promoted to commander, which is like a deputy chief. And then my chief went away, and I was the acting chief for a while. So that was pretty stressful.
That was quick.
Again, I'm learning the the finer techniques of executive level management, and my chief is my mentor, and then he up and leaves.
And when you say leave, did he resign, or did he move departments, or
he resigned? But he and the city manager and the city council were at odds with each other. So he's like,
it was removed.
Hey, he's like, he walks into my office one day. Hey, Keith, I'm leaving. I'm like, all right, chief, have a good night. He's like, no, I'm leaving. I'm like, what? He's like, yes, you're going to be the acting chief. And I'm like, how do I do that?
How do I do that? I just got here. My feet aren't even warm.
I just barely got here. No.
The seat's not warm yet. What's going on?
Exactly. So I had, I dealt with that. And then in May of 2004, the city council decided that they wanted to contract with the Riverside County Sheriff's Department to provide police services to the community because it's more cost effective, or so they thought at the time. And then you get all these resources, SWAT team, helicopters, you name it, all the super wazoo toys, because the county has all that stuff at their disposal. So I was one of the lucky few that got hired by the sheriff's department during that transition. So I went from being the hard rank of commander, filling the acting chief's position, and I got brought into the sheriff's department as a sergeant, as a patrol sergeant. So I went from riding a desk to back out in the streets, pushing a black and white around again, and shift work and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, so I did that, and I was actually kind of relieved, A, that I got hired, and B, that they brought me on as a sergeant, which is, I still think, is one of the best jobs in any law enforcement agency. I had less responsibility than I did working for the city PD, and they brought me over at equal pay. And then pretty soon I started getting raises, and I was making a lot more than I did as commander at the city PD. And I got better retirement too, better retirement formula. So it worked out really well. And patrol, I mean, I knew that like the back of my hand. But again, now I'm back out on the road, dealing with, unhappy people, death, trauma, grief, violence, so yeah, saw a lot of stuff. 2005, I went to work one night, and my friend that I grew up with, he worked for a campus police department in Fresno. Well, he came down to my house to take the lateral hiring test to get on with my department, the sheriff's department. So I gave him a house key. I said, stay in the guest room. I'm working graveyard shift. I'll see you in the morning, because he had to leave for a physical agility test the next day when I got off work. So I got home and I found my friend deceased in my guest bedroom. This is one of my best friends, a guy that I grew up with. So talk about being traumatized. I called 911 and everything, said, hey, my friend is dead in my guest room. And they're like, how do you know he's dead, sir? I'm like, and it was one of our 911 dispatchers, it was the sheriff's department. I'm like, yeah, because I'm a sergeant on your department. I've seen a lot of dead bodies. Like,
this one's,
okay.
So, after a few,
Yeah. So I had to make notification to his parents. I was the guy that made that call and all that.
Did you make the call to do that? Like, did you want to do that, or did somebody tell you that you had to?
Well, the deputies that responded to my house, they didn't want to do it. They're like, it might be better coming from you, Sarge, than
it might have been, but not for you.
Not for me. Not for me.
No, those are the hardest jobs anyways, let alone when it's your best friend.
Yeah. So, life goes on. 2008, I meet 2007, 2005, I met my now wife. So
were you single through that whole kind of time when you were down there? Obviously dating and stuff, but not anything super, super serious, or?
Oh yeah. So yeah. Oh yeah. I completely
skipped marriage number 2.
Skipped marriage number 2. Yeah. That one was like an anomaly. So, it's like, did that just happen?
Came and it went. It was here and it's gone.
There it went.
Not that she probably meant that little to you at the time, but
yeah, I mean, that was traumatic too. It was she had an affair. I was crushed. So I went through a divorce. About a year after I got brought on to the sheriff's department. And then my friend died in my house. Again, I'm by myself in this big house by myself. I had my daughters on the weekends and stuff. So yeah, it wasn't a good time in my life.
What was the tools that you used this time?
Oh, I drank.
You drank? Okay, sweet. So we got a commonality here, the drinking. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
There's you beginning to see a pattern here?
The pattern here. You drink. And for listeners and viewers, if you find that yourself diving into the bottle, as many officers do, I have to put my hand on my heart and say I'm one of the lucky ones that didn't. I may have done even stupider and more dangerous stuff, like ride my motorcycle as hard as I can and take that apex a little late and do things like that. Which to be honest is probably worse in some ways. But when it came to my home life and that, the ball, it didn't affect my home life as much, even though my home life was still being affected. It was different. But if you're one of the ones that is diving into a bottle anytime you see something traumatic or something, I'm telling you right now, I'm just bringing a little bit of awareness there to you. And I'm not talking to you, Keith. I'm talking to listeners. But it's one of those things. Just bring some awareness to it of when, see a pattern. We all have patterns. Just have a look at the pattern and what's causing you to want to dive into that bottle at night, or those bottles, depending on whatever your poison is. Nothing wrong with having a drink. It's just a matter of when you're having the drink and why you need the drink. So, all right. So you had the second one, the second divorce. Best friend dies. Have to tell the family. Whoever the lieutenant was, or above the lieutenant's above sergeant over there, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. Whoever the lieutenant was needs a little clip in the ear, I think, with that one. But is what it is. You learn from it. And then, okay, cool. So what was going on next?
So I met my current wife, and for me, the third time truly is the charm. We started dating and stuff, and then in May of 2008, I was involved in another shooting where some deputies and I were pinned down by gunfire for over an hour, and it was amazing and totally unprecedented. This never happened in the history of our department, but the two armed suspects were ultimately, because we had a perimeter, and every time we tried to move, get closer, they had high ground. Every time we tried to get closer, they just start, those black and white cars make good targets. They just start shooting at us.
Yeah, especially when you put red and blue flashing lights on the top of them that are really bright.
Exactly. So we have a couple of Bearcats coming, armored vehicles with our SWAT folks. And then we had two of our helicopters overhead. Well, they thought it would be a good idea to start shooting at our airships. And we had a SWAT sniper on board one of the helicopters, and he took both of those suspects out from the air.
Yeah, good on. Like, I don't like to promote killing, but that's not killing. That is protecting. And that is that's good on him. And I hope he got some sort of award for that, because
he did.
That is epic. And he should write a book on
that. They were dangerous.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, one of them was a woman. It was one guy and one gal. One of them was armed with an AK-47. The other one was armed with a Russian SKS.
So, for those that don't know much about guns, it's pretty much the same. They're very similar rifles. And okay, so you have that shooting happens with obviously a whole bunch of different people. What'd you do in response to that?
Yeah, I wasn't one of the actual shooters in that. I was busy, coordinating, talking on the radio and all that, and trying to stay out of the way of the bullets.
Yeah. But you obviously were sergeant at the time, so you had people that actually that you were in charge of, or that you had responsibility for, or would have felt that you had responsibility for. So there's a different pressure there, even though you're not having bullets whizzing over your head, which, knock on wood, I have never had to have happen. I'm very grateful for that. But there's different responsibilities there. So so how'd you respond after that incident?
Well, I responded by getting married 5 days after that.
Okay, that's one way. Was it already
to my now wife? Yeah. The wedding was scheduled long before the shooting happened.
Yeah.
So
you're like, I'm not letting this mess this up. No.
Yeah. And I didn't tell my wife about all of that mess until not too long ago, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm curious. So you did that. How long after? How many more years after that were you still in the police for?
Let's see. That was 2008, and then I retired in January of 2015.
Oh, wow. So I had quite a few years after that as well, and with your now wife and that, and I'm sure a whole bunch more stuff happened in that.
Yeah, a lot of cumulative stress. There was a multiple stabbing where a guy just he kidnapped her, bound and gagged her, and stabbed her multiple times, and I rolled up on that. It was just a fluke. a suspicious vehicle, and I rolled up on it and walked up on it as it was happening. So
How'd you respond to that one?
I drank. Actually, my drinking got worse after that one.
Yeah, that one would have been
Because
pretty
I
brutal.
had shoved everything so far back into the dark corners of my mind, and just went to work every day and did my job. And that incident in February 2010, it was like the past came colliding with the present. And then I started having the nightmares again. And even though there was no gunfire or gunplay in that stabbing, I started hearing gunfire and seeing muzzle flash in my sleep again. So the post-traumatic stress came back with the vengeance. And I started drinking more at night just to get to sleep. Initially, it was, just to get to sleep and to dull the senses. And I needed more and more and more. And it became a major problem with me until 2019. I self-imploded. Life happens after retirement. Bad things still happen. Like my dad died 6 months later. My father-in-law died. Two of my best friends died. One of my former deputies' wives was shot and killed in the line of duty. His wife was. And so I started self-medicating again. And then I just, melted down, and I had to finally just surrender. I'm like, I don't know what to do, but I need help. I got to do something. So I prayed. I tapped into my faith. I was raised in a Christian home. Wasn't really practicing. I mean, I've always been a believer, but I wasn't walking the walk and talking the talk. That's for sure. So I tapped back into my faith and learned about the 4 pillars of resilience. Working on my mental state, my physical state, the social aspect of my life, and the spiritual aspect of my life. And with those 4 things, and abstaining from alcohol, and getting help, going to psychotherapy and doing EMDR therapy for my post-traumatic stress, it helped me tremendously. And I am awesome. It's like I've done a complete 180. I'm living my best life now. I'm 57 years old, and I'm living my best life now, for these past couple of years. It's just been amazing.
So I've got so many questions, but I also, almost should do a part 2, but we're just going to carry on as long as you're okay to carry on there, Keith, as well. Sure. And for listeners in that, we've heard so much. There's been so many amazing things, but now we're going to get to the nitty gritty. We're going to get to the real tools. We're going to get to we've seen the patterns. We've seen what Keith has gone through, the lead up, the causes. Now we're going to go back. We're going to get Keith. I'm going to get him to explain a few things through the process of now that he's living his best life, to teach you, to help you kind of go through and so you don't have to wait till you're 57. You can do it at 27 and have that best life, because that's what we all want. And so one thing that's burning on my mind: 2 divorces, 3 marriages. What made the 3rd one stick? How is she different to the other 2 that just as it's stuck and she's not gone?
She's a long-suffering woman. She was too stubborn to let me go. Yeah. And it's definitely love, true love, unconditional love. And I put her through a lot, and aside from, when I was still on the job and I made those phone calls and said, honey, I'm going to be late because something really bad happened at work tonight, but I'm okay. I'm still with you. I put her through that. And then I put her through the whole drinking mess and my bad behavior. And, the anger, the hypervigilance, the nightmares. I used to wake her up. I'd have a nightmare, like a shooting dream. And I'd wake up like yelling, and she'd like jump out of bed all startled, and I'd freak her out. So I put her through a lot.
What do you think what do you
So
think made her different, or made your guys' relationship different to your previous two?
she's a different person than the other two. She's very loving, very caring, and very selfless. Very selfless. It's like, she sees an injured bird or a wounded animal and she wants to help it. And so I'm very blessed in that aspect. We just celebrated our 14-year anniversary last month. So
awesome! Congratulations, man.
Yeah, thank you. This one's lasted the longest, so
it sounds like it's not. It sounds like it's gonna last the length. And it's interesting. You said something just before the calling. Yep, I'm running late. Something bad happened, but I'm still with you. Did you do that with the previous two?
Yeah, I did. But I'm trying. I mean, I did, but nothing like really. Like I wasn't involved. The first shooting, I was flying it solo because I was separated from my first wife at the time.
More of along the lines of the communication. Did your communication, even like, obviously you probably wouldn't have been thinking about it, but did your communication levels naturally evolve through the relationship?
They did. I became a better communicator. I still didn't tell her everything. There were things that I kept concealed from her and held them close to the vest because I didn't want her to worry about me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what's he doing out there? We all know law enforcement is inherently dangerous. I don't need to tell her about some of the things that I've been involved with to make her worry more,
Yeah.
But that was
that's awesome. And the reason that I asked that is because there are so many people out there that it's like, okay, cool. And I want people to learn from this conversation some of the things that they can start to implement now. So there's that communication communication aspect. You don't have to tell them everything. And I say that it's one thing I didn't do either. I didn't tell my wife what was going on. I had a partner of mine, which literally was the thing that started my downward spiral. If I actually go back to it, partner and I went to go arrest the guy after doing some inquiries and figuring out where he was. Went to go arrest him in the house. He tried to run away. I didn't grab him really quickly or just, take real charge of it for whatever reason. And he went for the door and she went to go stop him. And he just clocked her one right in the cheek, dented her cheekbone, split it right open. She stumbled backwards, didn't lose consciousness or anything. Saw that. Again, being grateful side, I was training like an animal for our version of SWAT team at the time. And so I ran up this steep ass driveway and caught him at the top. And that's the one time that I told you about that I sprayed somebody because he was running from me and he had just punched her in the face. My sergeant goes to me, first thing he asks is, why didn't you taser him? I said, because I didn't want to miss.
Yeah.
I only have 2 shots on a taser, and you come to find out my spare cartridge had actually fallen out as I ran out the door. Oh
wow!
Because it was the old was it the X2s that had the 2 cartridges that held in the holster? Yeah, one of those had fallen out, so I actually only had that was the 3rd cartridge, so I would have had 2 shots, not 3. But I was like, I don't want to miss, so I just sprayed him. One stage I sprayed myself, but we'll go on a tangent there. But that was my downhill, and we were supposed to finish at 2 a.m. in the morning, didn't get home till 7, and I was riding my mountain bike to work at the time. I could feel my phone vibrate in my pocket as I came down the hill, the last hill down to my house. And I came around the back of my house, carried the bike around the boat, got to the back of the house, sat down on the back steps, and it's gonna get me kind of teary anyways. I'm a lot better than I used to be. I used to just open up like a water, like a fountain. And I sat down on the back steps and I just cried and cried and cried. My wife's like, what happened? What's happened? I was like, oh, B got assaulted. She's okay. And we caught the guy. That was as far as I went.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I held on to that for years and years until about, that was 20, that would have been 2012, I think it was, maybe the beginning of 2013. And I didn't fully release it until 2018.
Yeah. I can relate.
And it holds up on you, and it's all a lot of the core of where I ended up. And there's a lot of the same stuff. So if you were able to teach your younger self maybe one or two things specifically, what would be those one or two things that you teach your younger self, say when you were starting out, you're in your first couple of years of policing?
The job was my identity. And a lot of young cops, in their early 20s, when they go into it, it's not what they do, it's who they are. I am a police officer. And that was me. I lived it and breathed it, on and off duty. That it was my life. I loved the job, but the job didn't really love me back. The job is yeah, sure, it's made up of people, but the job itself, it's an inanimate object. It can't give you love. And I poured my heart and soul into that job, and it sucked the life out of me. So the first thing I would tell my younger self, or anyone wanting to go into the profession, is know who you are first before you go into the profession. See, I was young. I was 20 and a half when I got hired. I was just a kid. I didn't know anything about life. I didn't really know anything about myself or who I was. I didn't get a chance to go out and experience the world. I literally went from living at my parents' house into the police academy. I was living in my parents' house when I graduated the police academy and hit the streets. I didn't live on my own until I was 22. So, and I got hired at 20 and a half. So know who you are, and know what you're about. The job is not who you are. It's just what you do. It's a job. It's a profession. The other thing would be to bring balance into your life. I mentioned those 4 pillars of resilience early on. I didn't really know how to implement something like that in my life. You hear, oh yeah, working out's good for you. We all know that. There's all kinds of health benefits, physical activity. You get better sleep if you exercise and do cardio and stuff. And sleep is huge when it comes to resilience, bouncing back from trauma. So I would have done those things. I would have paid attention to my mental and emotional condition, my physical condition. I did work out back then, but I didn't pay too much attention to the mental or emotional part. I just sucked everything up and held it inside because that's what I was trained to do. The social pillar or area of your life is very important. It's important to develop meaningful relationships with the people you love and care about, nurturing relationships with people who validate you as a person. And it's important to cut out those toxic relationships that are no good for you.
Even if they're family.
Yeah, that's the social component. And then of course the spiritual. I teach a class at a state university called Psychological Survival for Law Enforcement. So I can't get in there and talk all about, Jesus and everything, or any particular denomination or faith. So when I talk about the spiritual component, for me, it's easy because I was raised in a Christian home. That's what I believe. So it's easy for me to adopt that into my spiritual life. So people who believe in nothing, I tell
you're
them,
still
well,
believing in something.
yeah, I tell them, you know what, go out and hike around a lake or something, because you're working on the physical pillar of your life. You're spending time in nature. And I don't know about you, but like when I get out in the woods, or I go fishing at a lake, and we have bald eagles around here where I live. We're a mile high elevation. When people think of Arizona, they think of the desert. We live in a mountainous area. So we have bald eagles and stuff flying around these lakes up here, and it's really cool to see. I feel connected with God when I experience all the nature and stuff like that. So that's the spiritual component. Anything that connects you with your higher power, tap into that.
Whatever that higher power is. It's, for me, I call it the universe, or what, and I do. The nature is everything. That's why when I was at my lowest, the council was like, you need a refill. And at first I was going to go work on super yachts and that. I was like, but I'll just be focused on the work. And so I was like, I need to take a break. And so I actually, lucky, or I don't call it lucky because you build your own luck in my mind, is we were in a financial position where I was able to take time off, and actually come to find out I could have even claimed on insurance around it all. But I took 2.5 months and I bought a motorcycle in Redding, California, and I rode through Arizona. I rode not far from where I know where you live, but I rode not far from where you were. I went through Phoenix and that as well. And I did 8,000 miles through Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, all the way to Houston, and then came back through all the southern states as well.
That's awesome, man.
I went to Southern California and all the way up, and I camped the first half of it. The second half, I was staying at people's houses, but I was still in nature. I was still going, riding the road. And it's so empowering that it locks you into that spirituality. It locks you into that connection with the caveman, to be perfectly honest. The connection with our core selves, who we actually are. We weren't designed to be in a concrete jungle. We were designed to be in nature. Whether you like it or not, we were. So I totally respond to that. I wanted to jump on one thing before we kind of look at kind of wrapping up a little bit. You talked about your identity. Now, this is something that I train people on. This is what Create from Why is all about. Is it's about really know who you are, so that everything you do serves you. That means your relationship, all of it, because if it doesn't serve you, you will get tired of it and you'll go looking for something that does. Now, that also means that when you're completely served, that whole look after yourself, then you're able to actually then give to other people and not feel like you're serving them, but feel like by you giving, you're then being served. And so it's that whole circle. And so I have figured out that it's, I call it your mission statement, but I also call it your why. I used to call it your why all the time, and then kind of everybody thinks of Simon Sinek when I say the why. So it's more mission statement. It is literally your mission statement is you. It embodies you. What is your mission statement, Keith?
Funny you should mention that. I actually have one.
Perfect.
I developed it. I just have to find it. Do you have a share screen on?
We can share for those that are viewing the video here. Let me just make sure. I think it is set so that you can share.
Okay.
Tell me if it doesn't let you.
Yeah, we're good. Hang on just a sec. Let me pull it up.
And then I want to know where it comes from, because what I've found with the training that I've done and the research that I've done is it actually comes and was planted when we were a kid, pre-7, toddler.
Can you see that?
Nope, can't see it yet. No.
Let me see.
Doesn't look like it's sharing.
Let me go back into Zoom. Let's go to share screen. How about now?
Yep, we can see that.
Okay. So my personal mission statement: I am mindful. I act as if until it becomes reality. I commit to others and follow through. I always tell the truth, even when it hurts. I am transparent. I serve God above all others and people without expecting anything in return. Because like you just mentioned, serving others, service work, you know, I like helping people, but I get something out of it too. I get that satisfaction, that good feeling that comes along with being able to give, lend the hand of help to someone who needs it.
That contribution instead of significance.
Right. Yeah, I am present. The past is gone. I use the hard lessons of the past to grow and go. I live for today. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. I inspire others. I am salt and light. I teach by exemplifying God in all that I do. I share my story of hope, strength, joy, and redemption with others.
I like it.
And that's it.
I like it. So Keith, what I do is I get people to the training that I do is there's all those levels, like we go through a 7-step process. And so find all the kind of different levels in that as well, and start kind of very logical and then get very emotional into it, like the emotional brain. So we go through the 2 different brains. And so in turn, it's rewiring that reticulating activating system, that filter of our brain. And in the depth of it all is your true why, which mine is mine is to be seen, or just to be seen, whether that be me or whether it be others. And so my mission statement, if I sum it all up, is I create us for myself to be seen and others to be seen or see themselves, to create the best version of ourselves. And that sums up everything that I do. If you summed up all of your mission statement that you had there, that you showed us, thank you for that. What would you put it in? What I find is that you must have the myself and then others, because otherwise you end up, so many people like, I help, for example, I help others see themselves so that I can see myself and we can create. Well, I'm like, well, instantly right there, you're giving everybody else first. So in turn, you're gonna feel like you have to serve them all the time.
Right.
Because language is everything. What would you say yours is, Keith? I'm curious, if you summed it all up.
Yeah, to sum it all up is, I take the hard lessons of the past and teach others from my mistakes so that hopefully they won't make the mistakes that I did.
I like it. Man. I like it. Oh, that's good. Any of these things, as long as it is serving you, it's so full. Last kind of question that I have for you is, I know that you've got a book out, a second or third version of it. So I want to give you the opportunity to tell viewers and share about that as well. So just tell us a little bit about that book.
Yeah. So in 2019, I started writing my autobiography, and basically I started journaling is how it started. It started out as journaling, and then I'm like, how the hell did I get here? From being a naive little kid growing up in a middle-class home in Orange County, California, how did I get to where I am today? So I went back chronologically, and I started from the beginning. And then I started talking about my life and some of the hard lessons I learned. Talked about my life before, during, and after law enforcement. So this book here, this was the first version of Amazing Grace. Yeah, From Sorrow to Amazing Grace: One Cop's Journey. So it sums up some of the lessons that I learned and what I did to get better and to become more resilient and more healthy. And then I did a rewrite. Actually, one moment, I'll grab it. So I did a rewrite of that one, and it's kind of a military green cover.
Yep.
With black and brown lettering. You heard of Dave Grossman. He wrote the foreword.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah. So this one, both of these books, this is the latest version.
Yeah.
The blue one is obsolete. I added more content to this, talking about the 4 pillars of resilience and stuff.
So if you're looking for that one, get the army green khaki kind of color.
Yep.
And then I know you've got one, the new one just recently.
Yeah, the latest one. This one was released 3 weeks ago. It's called Gunrunner.
Gunrunner. There we go.
And it's a true story. I wasn't looking to write another book. I really wasn't. But this was just too amazing of a story to pass up. I just had to be a part of it. But it's a story primarily about Mario Oliveira. He's a medically retired Somerville, Massachusetts police detective. He was shot 6 times in the line of duty, died 3 times on the operating table. He had a spiritual experience while he was dead. And the surgeon that operated on him is his full-time regular job is he's a trauma center doc at Mass General in Boston. But he's also a U.S. Army reservist at the rank of full bird colonel. And he's assigned to Army Special Forces as a special operator / battlefield surgeon. So I can't identify what unit he's with because of the non-disclosure agreement that the Army makes him sign, but you could probably kind of guess. Yeah. He's an amazing guy too.
Yeah.
So it's the story of these 2 gentlemen, and it's just amazing. I had a friend of mine, Major General David Grange. He wrote the foreword for the book, and that guy's a rock star. He is. Let me see. It's this guy here.
Oh yeah.
He's a retired Army Major General. He was a special operations guy himself. He was a Delta Force commander at one time, and he was the deputy commander during the first Gulf War under Norman Schwarzkopf. So he wrote the foreword for me. We're friends. We belong to a fraternal organization together. And he was kind enough to do that. But it's just an amazing story. Gunrunner is doing quite well right now on Amazon. We hit bestseller. We're the #1 new release in psychology and Christianity right now, and getting a lot of positive feedback from people on it.
No, that's good. And it's so important to get those stories out there around these different things. So that, again, and this is why we do the podcast, so that people can kind of understand and see the reality behind the badge, behind the uniform, behind the police officer, the firefighter, the nurse, the EMT, all of them, because they turn up when people are in their most dire need. And that's all they see is somebody that is there to save them. My dog's telling me she's hungry. If you can hear her growling in the background, it's kind of funny. She does this every night about 5:30, 6 o'clock. So, but last question I have for you, Keith. Well, actually, where can they get those books? Is it Amazon? Is there anywhere else?
Oh yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think Walmart and Target online.
Yeah,
they both sell it. There's a bunch of different vendors. Cool. I think Amazon has the best price. I think it's $14.99, and I've looked at some of the other book stores that are selling it, and some of them are $18 and $19.
That's crazy
for the book. I'm like, why would you do that? Amazon gives you free shipping and $15.
There you go. Hey. So there you go, guys. We will put some links down in the bio down, or the description down below. And I take it they can contact you through LinkedIn and that if they wanted to get in touch with you.
There, absolutely, Keith? Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn, Keith Knotek, Knotek. And I have a Facebook page. It's actually called Gunrunner Book on Facebook.
Oh,
but you
sweet.
can reach me through that. Yeah.
Cool. So Gunrunner books. Wait, well, we'll put those links in the description down below or above or wherever it ends up being, for wherever you're reading or watching or listening to this. But the last question I always ask our guests is, what is your top tip to self-happiness? Keith, your top tip, your top number one tip.
For me, I think my joy comes from God. For me, like I said, I wasn't a very spiritual guy before, and now I pray every day. And I see God in just the little things, like I said, I go fishing and kayaking and stuff. I was out on the water the other day, saw some falcons and stuff flying around, and it was just so cool. So I would say, tap into that spiritual component, because that's the thing that people seem to forget about a lot. We may work out and we'll do like word puzzles and, to sharpen the mind and all of that. And we have our circle of friends, but, tap into that spiritual side, and you might be surprised at how good you feel.
Yeah. Now I'm not a religious man. I've had religion in and out of my life from time to time, but I can say the spiritual side does not have to be God. It does not have to be whatever it is. If that's what you believe in, perfect. I love it. You've got mine's the universe, and I totally 1000% agree with you. As soon as I started to just sit in the fact that, yeah, it's all happening. It's there. I'm surrounded by amazingness. I'm surrounded by abundance. I'm surrounded around whatever it is that I want to create or look for. It'll give back 100-fold. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, I can't agree more with you there, Keith. Any last words before we kind of wrap up?
Yeah, I would just say to anyone out there that's suffering in silence right now, you don't have to live like that. It's okay to not be okay. However, it's not okay to go down a slippery slope by self-destructive means. For me, it was the bottle, and it could have led to something a whole lot worse than what it did. So there's people out there who care about you. There's people just frothing at the bit to lend you a helping hand and to help you get over the hump. Don't do it alone.
Yeah, no, great last words. And I'll just add on to that here at, Fight the Burnout podcast, and that we are always here. Whether you need an ear, whether you want resources, whether you want assistance, whether you want to come join into our program, if you want to do a VIP day, whatever it is, we are here to give you the resources that we can. We know a lot of people. We've had a lot of people on this podcast, and we also know a lot of people that haven't been on this podcast because they're not current first responders or ex-first responders, but they are helping first responders. There are a lot of resources out there. So know that you are not alone. You are supported and you're cared about, and we love you very much. So this is Fight the Burnout. Thank you for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe. And again, Keith, thanks so much for coming. Thanks for sharing your story. It is a lot of
pleasure, brother.
Really, really cool, good stuff. And thanks for your time. I know it's probably like almost 11 o'clock there. But it's been fun. The time's flown, man. And
yeah, it has.
that's why we just needed to keep going. So anybody who's listened to this whole thing, it's awesome. I don't think we're on par with Joe Rogan yet about length. Because I think some of his are 4 hours, but this one's been definitely worth the time. So thank you all, and thank you again, Keith. And remember, stay frosty out there, look after yourself. And my motto is always train hard, test easy. Sometimes that is by doing a whole lot of nothing or just looking after you first.